All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into some absolutely fascinating alternative history theories, drawn from the work of author Graham Hancock. We're going to map out some really intriguing claims about the origins of human civilization, the legendary lost continent of Atlantis, and a super provocative concept he calls a species with amnesia. My goal here is to break all of this down for you so you can see exactly what this theory proposes. It's a massive, sweeping narrative that stretches across millennia. So, whether you've been following these ideas for years or you're hearing about them for the very first time, this breakdown is going to give you a crystal clear understanding of the source material.
But first, I want you to imagine something really profound for a second. What would happen if the entire human race just lost its memory? Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that humanity has completely forgotten its own parents, its own origins. You wouldn't have a clue where you came from, how you got here, or what the world was like before you arrived. That deep, unsettling feeling of just being a blank slate, that perfectly sets the mysterious tone for the theory we're unpacking today. Because the premise here isn't just some fun hypothetical scenario. It claims this is the actual reality of the human condition.
Okay, Section 1, the origins of Atlantis. Let's dive right in and explore where this whole legend actually begins.
So, according to this alternative history, the story of Atlantis wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It actually has a very specific chain of custody passed down across incredible stretches of time. It starts with the classical Greek philosopher Plato, who gave us the earliest surviving written mention of the lost continent. But here's the catch. Plato didn't invent it. He got the information from an earlier Greek philosopher and lawmaker named Solon. And where did Solon get it? Well, he reportedly got this information directly from an Egyptian priest in the city of Sais, right there in the Nile Delta. And here is the truly staggering claim. That priest was referencing historical records going back more than 9,000 years before his own time. To put that into perspective, if you do the math, since Solon lived around 600 BC, adding 9,000 years to that places the story right at the end of the last ice age. We're talking way before the ancient Greeks or even the very first known pharaohs.
Moving on to Section 2, a species with amnesia. This staggering timeline brings us directly to a concept rooted in cyclical destruction.
Now, what's really interesting about this is Hancock's central metaphor, the idea that modern humans are currently suffering from a collective memory loss. He defines us, literally, as a species with amnesia. The theory argues that we're essentially children who have entirely forgotten our own parents. And the culprit for this global memory wipe? The text points to a massive world-altering cataclysm that hit at the very end of the last ice age. This cataclysm basically wiped the slate clean, completely destroying those parent civilizations and taking our collective history right down with them.
There is this genuinely chilling quote attributed to that ancient Egyptian priest who is speaking to Solon, and it really anchors the dark, catastrophic cycle this whole theory describes. The priest stated that our Earth is periodically visited by a gigantic cataclysm. It's not a one-and-done event, it's a recurring reset button. And every single time this happens, as the quote says, mankind is forced to begin again like children with no memory of what went before. All that previous knowledge, culture, and history? Just gone. Wiped away, leaving the survivors to essentially start over in the dark. Imagine if everything we know today just vanished overnight, leaving our distant descendants to figure the whole thing out from scratch. It's a pretty wild thought.
Section 3, the ancient alarm clock. So what actually happened to the people who survived this great ice age cataclysm?
Well, according to the theory, not everyone was wiped out. Some members of that parent civilization actually did survive the great disaster. But they didn't just scatter randomly to the winds. They purposefully settled in a few highly significant locations across the globe. Specifically, places like the High Andes Mountains and the Giza Plateau in Egypt, the home of the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx. The whole idea here is that these survivors carried with them this wondrous, highly advanced knowledge from before the disaster, and they urgently needed a way to preserve it for future generations.
And this brilliantly illustrates how they supposedly did it. To preserve that knowledge, Hancock theorizes that these massive ancient structures like the pyramids weren't just built as tombs or statues. They were intentionally designed to function as an alarm clock for the planet. Think of these megaliths as a permanent, giant beacon. The goal of this beacon was to continuously draw people toward it over the millennia, basically waiting patiently until the time and conditions were just right so it could finally wake humanity up from its collective amnesia.
Let's move to Section 4, a modern awakening, and see how this builds into our present day. How exactly does an ancient alarm clock relate to modern society?
When you look around the world today, it's pretty easy to see immense turmoil, conflict, and disaster. It's a dark, often chaotic reality we live in. But right in the middle of all that chaos, this theory identifies a major counterbalance. It points to a profound great awakening of consciousness that is happening right now amongst open-minded people everywhere.
So, the crucial point is this. Hancock's theory connects these two things directly. That great awakening of consciousness we just talked about, it's viewed as the direct result of the ancestors' alarm clock finally going off. The assertion here is that this ancient beacon is currently working. All that special, wondrous knowledge and the message sent down through the ages by those original survivors is no longer dormant. It's finally coming through loud and clear to anyone open to receiving it.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. If we follow the logic we've just mapped out together, we really have to ask ourselves, is this ancient message finally being heard? Are we, right at this very moment, in the process of waking up from our millennial-long amnesia? This explainer has walked you through the core claims of this alternative history, from the Egyptian records 9,000 years before Solon to the Great Ice Age cataclysm, and this fascinating concept of an architectural alarm clock. It's an absolutely incredible lens through which to question the accepted mysteries of human history. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning and keep learning.